So we looked at how to find slope from a graph. We've looked at how to find slope from a table. Today you guys are going to learn the slope formula. Graph always works, but graphing 2 points is sometimes a pain, especially if a graph is not already made or if it's numbers that are too far apart that you don't want to count that far. A table works. It might work all the time, might be convenient all the time, but the slope formula is what you will see in high school. This also comes up in a lot of applications in like Algebra 2 and Calculus, okay? So, finding slope using formula. Let's go back and review our definition of slope. We said slope was the change in y-coordinates over the change in x-coordinates, right? It's a ratio. Slope compares the change in the y-coordinates to the change in the x-coordinates. Now, let's say I have 2 coordinates, and I'm going to have x sub 1, y sub 1. Those are subscripts. Notice I wrote them a little low. They're not exponents. They're down below the variable. Those are called subscripts, and you can read that as x sub 1, y sub 1. When we get lazy, we often say x1, y1, okay? And then I'll have a second point whose coordinates are x sub 2, y sub 2. Now, why do I use subscripts? Well, the reason I use subscripts is I still want to use x and y, okay? Because I have an x coordinate, I have a y coordinate. But I want to be able to tell them apart. The subscript of 1 tells me these points go together, coordinates go together. The subscript of 2 tells me these go together. Now, what is the math operation for change? The mathematical operation for change is subtraction. So we're really subtracting the x-coordinates and subtracting the y-coordinates. So the slope formula is this. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1, that's the change in the y-coordinates, over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, that's the change in the x-coordinates. Change is subtraction. Subtraction is change. Couple of things to point out. The y's have to go on top, okay? If we think about rise over run, rise rhymes with y's. The y's go on top. The other thing that's important is you have to start with the same one. The 2's are first, the 1's are second. You could reverse it as long as you reverse them both. Now, here's what we do. We've got 2 points. We're going to label them. The first one's x1, y1. The second one is x2, y2. We label it just so it makes it easy to see. We're going to write our formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We're going to write it a bunch so we make sure we have it memorized. Now we're going to substitute. Here's the issue. This involves subtractions and negatives, which give us trouble. So be careful. So, let's see, I've got 6 minus 3, that's y2 minus y1. I got them from right here. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is negative 2. I put that negative 2 in parentheses. Remember, when you substitute a negative, put it in parentheses. So 6 minus 3 over 4 minus a negative 2. What is 6 minus 3? 3. What happens to 4 minus a negative 2? Keep it, change it, change it. I get 4 plus 2, which is 6. 3 6 is 1/2. Okay? It simplifies. Now, let's look at another one. X sub 1, y sub 1 over x sub 2, y sub 2. Write your formula. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. I'm going to substitute. Y sub 2 is negative 4 minus y1 is 6 over x2 is 5 minus x1 is 0. Notice I put my y's on top, my x's on bottom. Notice the two that go together are stacked. Okay? Now, negative 4 minus 6. Keep it, change it, change it. That's negative 4 plus a negative 6. That's negative 10. 5 minus 0 is 5. I can simplify this. The slope is negative 2. Okay? Now, let's look at our 2 special cases. let's look at this one. Let's see if anything funny happens. X sub 1, y sub 1 over, and then x sub 2, y sub 2. Write your formula. Plug in. So what do I get? 4 minus 4 over negative 3 minus 0. What is 4 minus 4? 0 over negative 3. Uh-oh, this is one of our special cases. What's 0 divided by anything? 0 divided by anything is 0. Remember, when 0 is on top, that is okay. So what kind of line is this? If I were to graph these, what would I get? Since the slope is 0, I would get what? I would get a horizontal line. Okay? Now, let's look at this. x1, y1, x2, y2. Write your formula. Plug it in. Negative 2 minus 2 over 5 minus 5. Negative 2 minus 2, that'd be negative 2 plus a negative 2. Keep it, change it. I get negative 4 over 0. Remember, when 0 is in the bottom, that's a no-no. What is something divided by 0? Undefined. No can do. Okay? So, what kind of line would this be? If I were to graph this, 5, 2, and 5, negative 2, that'd be 5, 2, 5, negative 2. I would get a vertical line. Okay, this is just practice. This is a formula we're going to plug in. We're going to see what we do. We just need to be careful with our subtraction. So I want you to pause the video. I want you to try these 4 problems. Write your slope formula every time. Show me your work, and then check and see how you did. Alright, how'd you get? I got negative 3/7. Undefined, which would mean that would be a vertical line because it has undefined slope. I got 0. If I graphed those 2 points, I would get a horizontal line. And then I got 5. Remember that whole numbers are okay, improper fractions are okay, mixed numbers are not when you're finding slope. Alright, if you have any problems, try these again. It's really just a subtraction issue. And if you have any questions, write them down. We'll do practice in class.